Right now, leprosy is one of the most curable diseases on the planet. A simple course of antibiotics, taken correctly, can stop it completely. But for most of human history, this same disease turned people into outcasts, forced entire communities to build isolated colonies, and left millions with permanent physical damage before anyone understood what was actually causing it. The story of how humans figured out leprosy is really a story about fear, misunderstanding, and how long it can take science to catch up to suffering. Leprosy is ancient. Skeletal evidence shows signs of the disease in remains from India dating back roughly 4,000 years, and written references appear in some of the oldest medical texts in human history, including ancient Egyptian, Chinese, and Indian sources. But for thousands of years, nobody understood what actually caused it. The disease slowly damages nerves, skin, and eyes, leading to disfigurement, numbness, and in severe, untreated cases, the loss of fingers and toes. Not because the disease eats away flesh directly, as many people believed, but because untreated nerve damage leads to repeated, unnoticed injuries. Without any understanding of bacteria or infection, ancient and medieval societies filled in the gaps with fear. Many cultures assumed leprosy was a divine punishment, a curse, or evidence of moral failing. In medieval Europe, people diagnosed with leprosy were sometimes forced to wear bells or rattles to warn others of their approach, and were legally and socially separated from their communities entirely. Leper colonies spread across Europe, Asia, and Africa, isolating patients not because doctors understood contagion, but because communities were simply terrified. The actual cause remained a mystery until 1873, when a Norwegian physician named Gerhard Armauer Hansen examined tissue samples from patients under a microscope and identified a rod-shaped bacterium living inside infected cells. It was one of the first times in history that a specific bacterium had been directly linked to a specific human disease, predating even the wider acceptance of germ theory in mainstream medicine. Hansen named it Mycobacterium leprae, and the disease is still medically referred to as Hansen's disease today, in his honor. But identifying the cause didn't immediately lead to a cure. For decades afterward, treatment options remained brutal and largely ineffective. Doctors tried chaulmoogra oil, extracted from tropical seeds, injected painfully into patients with inconsistent results at best. Isolation policies continued well into the 20th century in many countries, including forced quarantine facilities in the United States, Norway, and parts of Asia, separating patients from their families sometimes for the rest of their lives, even after science understood the bacterium responsible. The real breakthrough came in the 1940s, when researchers discovered that a sulfone drug called dapsone could effectively suppress the bacterium. It wasn't a perfect solution. Treatment required years of continuous medication, and the bacterium slowly began developing resistance to dapsone used alone, threatening to undo decades of progress. Scientists needed something stronger, and more importantly, something that worked using multiple drugs at once, so the bacterium couldn't adapt its way around any single treatment. That solution arrived in 1981, when the World Health Organization introduced multidrug therapy, combining dapsone with two additional antibiotics, rifampicin and clofazimine. This combination attacked the bacterium from multiple directions simultaneously, dramatically reducing treatment time and virtually eliminating drug resistance as a problem. For the first time in human history, leprosy became reliably, affordably curable, and the World Health Organization began distributing the treatment free of charge to patients worldwide. The results were staggering. In 1985, leprosy was considered a public health problem in over 120 countries. By the early 2000s, that number had dropped to a small handful, with global case counts falling by more than 90%. Millions of people who once faced a lifetime of disfigurement and social exile could now be fully cured within 6 to 12 months, often without any lasting physical damage at all, provided treatment started early enough. So here's the full picture. A disease that once inspired legally enforced isolation, ringing bells, and centuries of religious blame turned out to be nothing more than a slow-moving, entirely treatable bacterial infection once science finally caught up. Leprosy still exists today, with a few 100,000 new cases diagnosed globally each year, but it no longer has to mean a lifetime of exile. What changed wasn't the disease, it was our understanding of it. And that difference between fear and knowledge remains one of the clearest examples of what happens when science finally answers a question humanity had been terrified of for thousands of years.